Poetry is my life, and my poetry sucks. My poetry sucks because it still leaves some stones unturned. Can't ever seem to get as close to you as I want to be. My poetry sucks because it still can't understand or explain something as simple as sex. Can't ever seem to tell you when I'm going to do anything about asking you out sometime. But now I am dreaming of a poetry that blasts into inconceivable futures that no one's ever heard of or cared about till now. I am dreaming of a poetry that drifts lazily back into a past which is entirely forgotten or which was never even known or recorded. I am dreaming of a poetry that calls into being from nothing that which has never existed and creates indescribable creatures no zoologist could ever recognize as life. But first, I have to learn how to write like that. I dream of a poetry that is evolving so fast that it is always unsure of itself, a poetry which is sometimes weak and indecisive, like that first muddy blop of something that tried to slither and flop onto land just to see what was there. But it'll take me a lifetime just to begin looking for it. I am dreaming of a poetry that isn't afraid to mock itself or tie itself in knots and lay there screaming just to prove it's alive. My poetry sucks because it hasn't learned to be as frightened as you feel all the time. Can't seem to find a handle on the soul sound it's been looking for. My poetry sucks because it hasn't unlearned its safe intellectual detachment, can't seem to get rid of its silly little grin. But now I am searching for a poetry that isn't afraid of the calm, still air, isn't afraid to be tender and quiet, isn't afraid to speak slowly or whisper out sweetly. I want to capture a poetry that is so real it detects subtle changes in the weather, spies on the silence of a woman in her garden, catches someone praying silently in an abandoned country church. I want to embrace a poetry that has forgotten its style, trips over its words, and trembles a little when I first start to read it. My poetry sucks because it cannot find a way to equal the wide open sky, or a sky filled with an unspeakable number of stars, or jungle so remote and primitive and wild that no man has ever been in them for fear of being swallowed alive. I dream of a poetry that calls on us to consider a world where evil has no power and where time and death and space can all be transcended, where the best of writers are creating new planets for us to live on, and the worst poets are living better than sultans. But I have no idea who can lead me to it. Maybe you can. My poetry sucks because I have refused to be the idiot I would need to be, to try the things that need to be tried, have not had the delusions of grandeur necessary, to rush to the front lines and see what it feels like, to stop the bullets of fear and self-consciousness with my own flesh and bones. I cannot write that poetry alone. You cannot write that poetry alone. That poetry which is so full and so empty, so big and so small, so true and so imaginary, that petty minds cannot suppress it, governments cannot censor it. A poetry so filled with honesty and life that the darkness cannot stop it. That poetry we can only write together. But for now, all I can do is dream about it, but I will keep dreaming about it because poetry is my life and my poetry sucks.